Hello and welcome to Mysteryus. I'm Tony Pratt, your host for mysteryus, and today on the program our guest is Barry Jernigan. Welcome to Mysteryus, Barry.
Thank you, Tony.
Now, Barry, you are the president of the Nashville chapter for the NCFM. What is the NCFM?
Well, actually, I'm the president of the Kentucky-Tennessee chapter of the National Coalition for Men.
Okay.
Exactly.
Now, what is the National Coalition for Men, and what do they do?
The National Coalition for Men is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, men's rights organizations in the United States. We are primarily involved with promoting public awareness of men's rights issues, such as men who were victims of domestic violence, men who were victims of false charges filed against them, men who were victims of paternity fraud, things like that. Those are probably what I call the big three issues similar to that.
Okay. Now, a lot of times men are abused and it just goes unrecognized. I notice there's no shelters for men, right? I mean, you can't be if you're a victim of domestic abuse and you're a male. Can you go to a women's shelter? I mean, how does that?
There are some shelters who will accept men who are victims of domestic violence. Most of the time, they are men who are victims whose partners are also men. What's really amazing is that the domestic violence associations, and I've researched this, follow what is called the Duluth Model, which is the radical feminist model of domestic violence that teaches that society is generally oppressive to women and that the microcosmic situation in the family is that the husbands are abusive to women, and that's why there has to be more programs for women than for men. What's really interesting is that they refuse to recognize that women can be just as violent as men in relationships, so they actually refuse service to women whose abusive partners are women as well, which is amazing to me that they would actually refuse service to women when they claim that they are egalitarian.
Right, and there's a double standard in society where if women are, you know, for example, charged with some kind of child abuse or sexual abuse or even murder, and in the case of a local lady who actually shot her husband with a double-barreled shotgun, and she served a few months and was released because she claimed she was abused, but there was no charges were filed at the time and all this stuff. And men in the same situation, they'd be in jail for the rest of their life. I mean,
well, it depends on the circumstance. It depends on you know, the judges and the lawyers that you have. What we basically have in America today are two different forces that basically work against men in these circumstances. One is the institution of chivalry, which says that we must give more attention and more help to women and children, and that men are basically to be sacrificed or to sacrifice themselves, like in war and all of that. And the other one is the emergence of a radical feminism, which also basically says the same thing, that, you know, we have to pay attention to women and ignore men in these circumstances, because women have been ignored in society for so long, and so now it's time to, you know, switch things around and to have women being the ones getting the help and not men.
right, only women are the victims and only men are the perpetrators.
Right, and that's not true. Erin Pizzey from England is a woman who established the very first domestic violence shelters in the world, in England, in the 1970s. And she said that the problem is that people abuse people. It's not a male versus female problem. It's couples abuse each other. And the real ones who really suffer in the circumstances are the children, because the cycle continues. If you have a woman who's abusive to her husband, then it's very likely that her children are also going to be abusive to their spouses, whether they're male or female. Erin Pizzey herself was abused by her mother. And she wanted to do something to help everyone, you know, and even when she spoke out about this situation and said, well, we need to help men as well as women, she was booed, you know, she was called names, you know, by the feminists in England. She had, you know, a lot of problems, and even to this day, you know, she still has problems being accepted. And she's the one that actually started the domestic violence shelter movement in England, and she even says that this is a serious problem, that men are not being, you know, treated in the same way as women.
What percentage, I mean, do you think the vast majority of abuse is male toward female, or where do the percentages lie there?
I believe the United States government figures for the number of men abused annually by a domestic partner is 875,000 men annually are abused. And in fact, that's the figure that is used by the Kentucky Domestic Violence Association on their website. They have a PSA video where they actually have that figure there. That's an awful lot of people a year. I mean, that's more than the entire population in 2007 of the state of Wyoming. That's more than the entire population of the state of North Dakota. South Dakota, the District of Columbia.
Would you say that it goes largely unreported, though, just because of the chivalry thing as well? I mean, men don't want to admit.
Exactly. There is that problem. But another problem has to do with the police in reference to how they're being trained to deal with domestic violence situations. And a lot of them are being coached by people who were instructed by the feminists. This is what you must do. Right. They have scenarios where the most that a woman will inflict is like a scratch on a man's arm or something like that. Well, you know, anybody, you know, any guy who's been a victim of domestic violence, which I haven't, but I've, you know, talked to guys who have, say that's laughable. You know, women use weapons, you know, they use rolling pins, they use, you know.
Yeah, I knew this guy who was
guns and knives, you know.
Who ran the, what's it called, the Hall of Fame Motor Inn restaurant down there, and his fiance, he had paid for her to have her teeth fixed, and they had the plastic temporary teeth in there until her porcelains came in, and she had beat him in the head with an iron, and he put his hands on his head, and it was bruised. You could see the outline of the iron, you know, on the other side of his hand, and of course he slapped her, and the thing came out of her. The temporary plastic thing that where she was getting her teeth fixed came out, so he's the one that went to jail. Right. He went to jail and had to have, you know, stitches, and he had concussions, and he nearly died from it, and she didn't even get arrested.
Right, and there are circumstances where women are arrested.
Yeah.
But like for instance, at the NCFM right now, we have a cop, a retired cop from the NYPD, and he says that one of the biggest problems that we have is that even policemen who are victims of domestic violence will not get assistance, and their fellow cops will not help them because they have a code that they follow, and they don't want to lose their jobs. Basically, you know, if they violate their policies, then they could lose their job. So even if, you know, they say, well, this is wrong, it still goes unnoticed because, you know, they could lose their job. So that's one of the biggest problems that they have.
Now you had a recent speaker
because of the AWA, the Violence Against Women Act. You know, the
Violence Against Women Act. You had a recent speaker at Vanderbilt University. Now who was he, and what was his topic?
Dr. Richard Driscoll is one of our members. He lives in Knoxville. He is a writer. He's a psychologist. He's a marriage counselor. And he has a new book that just came out. It's called You Still Don't Understand, which is about relationship dynamics between men and women. And in the book, he states that, and this is from, you know, lots of marriage counselors have this same information, that women in relationships will start arguments more, and women will escalate arguments more. And in fact, men's natural reaction in an argument with their wife is to placate, is to withdraw. Right. And the basic reason for that is a defense mechanism. Because when a woman raises her voice, a man's stress level instantly goes up. So basically, he's protecting his health by, and in fact, some guys even have been known to leave the house, you know, to get away from. In fact, I have a theory that basically what was going on when that man was shot, you know, by the air guards in Miami, is that's exactly what was going on. He was reacting naturally. His wife was having an argument with him on the plane. He wanted to get away from her. And they thought he was a terrorist, I guess, and they shot him. But this is what Dr. Driscoll says in the book. Now, we did have a presentation at Vanderbilt, but we had no audience. So there really wasn't a presentation. Nobody showed up for it.
Okay. Well,
but at any rate, it was an experience. I look at everything as experience. You know, you learn something.
Well, yeah.
So no, I didn't promote it well. That's right.
Sorry about that.
It was my first promotion. And